We love you, Coach Jacie Hoyt, not so much you, NCAA, and we can love Mike Gundy, especially after bringing us Doug Meacham. If you're looking for a nudge on whether Doug Meacham could be successful, all you have to do is look at his past.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I'm going to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your purchase. Make sure that you go to GameTime today to get the bee's knees for all your ticketing needs. Meanwhile, we shift into the conversation of not only Cowboy football, but the fact that we have brought in Doug Meacham. After years of watching Casey Dunn try to do it, it was like putting a square peg in a round hole. Now, from a recruiting standpoint, Casey Dunn was a legendary wide receivers coach, and he was still able to bring in some legendary wide receivers that had capabilities to catapult their careers to the NFL. I don't think any of us could argue the fact that if we had a competent offense, Brennan Presley's draft stock would be soaring, and Dejon Stribling maybe would have never even left. Although you could make the argument that Dejon Stribling played his way into the money that he got, and we're all happy for him at Ole Miss. We're also happy, I think, by and large, with the fact that we have brought in Doug Meacham. I love Todd Grantham and the entire NFL staff that we have brought in on the defensive side of the ball, primarily because there are no connections with Mike Gundy in the past. So I clearly think that means Todd Grantham is going to run his own ship and do his own thing for the most part. Offensively, I know I was a little wary whenever we announced Doug Meacham to be the guy, because it almost felt like, oh, great, Gundy's digging back into his old guard buddies club to make another run at this thing and be involved in the offense. And you know what? I wasn't necessarily okay with it, but the more the guys that we've brought in to go alongside this roster, and the more digging I did, the more I realized that I have some faith in Doug Meacham. More faith than I had in Casey Dunn at any point in time. Although I will admit his promotion from wide receiver coach to offensive coordinator at that time did make some sense. Now, what makes no sense whatsoever is the fact that Mike Gundy retained Casey Dunn year after year after year, even when he was offense coordinator, even when things weren't going well, just like in 2021. Of course, one of the greatest seasons of all time in Oklahoma State history, but that's because it likely was the greatest defense of all time in Oklahoma State history. Offensively, we didn't do anything to help. And it was very evident that Casey Dunn was okay with 3 and outs because he knew the defense was going to bail us out. Whether that was Dunn, Gundy, a combination of the two, I don't know. But Doug Meacham, if we're rebuilding, which is precisely what we're doing, then this does make even more sense, because Doug Meacham was around in the beginning of the Mike Gundy era. Mike Gundy was starting his career at Oklahoma State as the head man in 2005, the same time as Doug Meacham was here. So yes, that was the same time that we're bringing in Bobby Reed. That was the same time that we're needing some assistance in recruiting and getting Zach Robinson into Stillwater America. But on top of that, Doug Meacham, just the list of dudes that he's brought to multiple universities, primarily here, but some of the other stops as well, and the development that he's been able to provide should keep us all very excited. A blast from the past, that is Doug Meacham, who was responsible for the development and coaching of Adarius Bowman, DeJuan Woods, Brandon Pettigrew. He recruited and obviously was instrumental in the development of Des Bryant, Damian Davis, Hubert Inium, Josh Cooper, Justin Blackman, Cooper Bassett, Tracy Moore, Charlie Moore, Colton Shelf, Josh Stewart, Brandon Shepard, David Glidden, tight end Blake Jackson, who I think a lot of us forget about because he transferred in. He had 598 yards and averaged 19.9 yards per catch under the tutelage of Doug Meacham. While at KU, he coached up Khalil Herbert, Kwame Lassiter, Steve Sims Jr. He recruited Puka Williams, who ended up being one of the greatest phenoms that we've seen in quite some time, especially at KU, at a time where they were obviously down. At TCU, he helped recreate the career of Max Duggan, Tay Barber, Darian Davis. He recruited their 5-star running back, Zach Evans. He also recruited and developed Kendre Miller, Darwin Barlow, Quentin Johnson, Savion Williams, Josh Hoover, Sam Jackson V, who is now a Cowboy, who played quarterback for Doug Meacham at TCU. But he also lured away John Paul Richardson to become a TCU Horned Frog. That group, plus the guys that we have coming back, is going to be, I think, a breath of fresh air for us in Cowboy country who have grown fond of seeing high-flying offenses. And again, you got to talk about the Brandon Weeden days that Doug Meacham was here for, right? This is a connection of the past, but it's also another time for Mike Gundy to rebuild right next to Doug Meacham. And of course, Doug Meacham at TCU was there for their epic run at the national championship, and even the development and recruiting of Josh Hoover is obviously going to be a storyline that everyone needs to pay attention to. The development or the assistants and getting Haas Haney. And of course, Haas Haney is a pretty good story in and of itself, because not only was he very comfortable with Doug Meacham, he also was at one point in time recruited to Kevin Johns at Duke. So when you have Kevin Johns and Doug Meacham, it seemed like a recipe for success. That's another reason why I think we should all be pretty excited about what Doug Meacham provides us, is because he brought in Kevin Johns. Tim Rattay was a great recruiter, and I do think that he was limited in some of the things that he thought he could do in our offense. But nonetheless, when you have Kevin Johns coming in alongside Doug Meacham, and then you bring in Corey Patterson, and now we have Theron H. coaching wide receivers. These are all dudes that have done it at multiple stops, multiple levels. We've even got Cooper Bassett coming back in, which was a guy that was recruited and coached up by Doug Meacham at Oklahoma State. So that blast from the past connection is something that I think should carry a lot of weight. It should carry a lot of excitement for Oklahoma State coming into this next season. Just like defensively, when you're at the very bottom of national rankings, you can't really do much worse. Well, the same can be said offensively. And case in point is the fact that Ollie Gordon rushed for 880 yards while getting hit in the backfield over 51% of the time. And then the transfer portal. We had to have weapons to kind of add some depth. Well, we added that. And now, whenever you're talking about the quarterback position, bringing in Haas Haney, whether you're on the Zane Flores camp or the Milo Alke Smith camp or the Garrett Rangel camp, bringing in Haas Haney does absolutely nothing but make the quarterback room tremendously better. And then some of the receivers that we've brought in. I really like Lloyd. I think the speedster from Nebraska is going to do big things. I think Shamar Rigby was starting as a true freshman for a reason, and he's barely scratched the surface of what he could potentially be as well. So for as much as we did love the wide receiver development and the NFL accolades a lot of the guys got after their tutelage from Casey Dunn, Doug Meacham has a very comparable number of guys that he's either recruited, developed, or sent to the NFL at multiple stops. And again, if you go back to the beginning of Oklahoma State under Mike Gundy, Doug Meacham was there. So he has been there for the build-up, the rebuild, the rebrand, the explosion of talent. He's been there for all of it. And now he brings in a decent number of coaches and a decent number of transfers that have the capability to provide meaningful snaps right away. Additionally, a lot of these guys have multiple years of eligibility remaining, which is, again, another testament to not only what Doug Meacham could potentially bring instantaneously, but the fact that he's thinking about some of the future stuff, which I don't know that we'll say about the defensive side of the ball. Is Todd Grantham going to be looking to take over at, a big-time college sometime soon? Yeah. But Doug Meacham has so many connections that there could be a conversation about him someday maybe being the next guy. I don't know. I don't know that, he's a spry chicken when it comes to age, but it doesn't matter. What matters is winning and being at the top of the Big 12 and setting yourself up for more future realignment to where you're at least some semblance of safe. Speaking of being safe, you can be that today too. Being safe can be boiled down to just having peace of mind on a multitude of things. And Talkspace is going to help give you that peace of mind because it's a therapy game changer. It's going to help you manage stress, improve your sleep, communication, while also finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into your busy schedule. That's where Talkspace is going to come in and help you out. It is the leading virtual therapy provider, making getting help easy for you, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within the first 48 hours. That makes it convenient, which means you have sessions from the comfort of your home and even get messages from your therapist in between your appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It has never been easier to prioritize your mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you will get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege and enter the promo code SPACE80. Do that to get matched with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege, all one word, and enter the promo code SPACE80 for that $80 off your first month. And show your support for this show by using that SPACE80 code with Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege, all one word, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Go there today. Get your therapy started for your peace of mind. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we get to talk about a little bit more football. And the reason this is pertinent to us is because Mike Gundy has recently, in the last couple months, had some of the discussions with the media in regards to getting down to the 105 roster limit, and additionally, how there's going to be changes and it's going to become a business and the guys are going to end up being employees to some degree. And if you're getting rid of the national letters of intent, which I was hooting and hollering about when that decision was made because I thought it was a terrible idea from the get-go, you're already making a confusing time for these young men that are getting prodded and poked and pulled from every direction by family, and which college should you go to, which coach is going to work best for you, and here's the NIL for this school, and here's the NIL for this school. On top of all of that craziness, you're going to now ask them to not sign any letter of intent, which Mike Gundy has said, well, that's where a contract will come into play. And now a contract will become the new LOI. So instead of signing your national letter of intent to attend that university, you now sign an NIL deal. Right? That's the same thing. It's the same contract. We've heard that from not only Mike Gundy, but several coaches until now. Because Wisconsin had a football player that signed a 2-year NIL deal and then got poached by Miami. And Wisconsin was like, hey, dude, you can't do that. You signed a contract. I don't know if you know how contracts work, but this is a commitment. And he left and he was like, no, I'm going to go to Miami, and if you want to sue me, right? If you want to come after me, then come after me, bro. And of course, Wisconsin was like, absolutely, NCAA, step in. Like, you can't, what is this? And the NCAA just sat on their hands. Not surprising. So the real question is not, will the NCAA ever get their crap together and become a legitimate governing body once again? I feel like that kite has already flown way up into the sky. It's hard to put toothpaste back in the tube, and that is where the NCAA is. Yes, I have kind of complained about the NCAA before because it was negatively docking Oklahoma State over a $300 bull crap, and we tried to do the right thing, and we turned ourselves in. We made the player pay back the $300 immediately, and we told the NCAA, like, hey, sorry, we had an old coach from the previous staff, and he paid a kid $300 to do something. We found out about it immediately, made him pay the $300 back, and called you. And it absolutely buried us. It took us out of playing in the NCAA tournament when we had the best basketball player in the country in Cade Cunningham. So we all got deprived of everything that Cade Cunningham could have potentially possibly been. Because coming off of that, we still had a very good roster returning. So the year before, the NCAA could have done something, but they weren't going to because it was Cade Cunningham. The very next year, we returned like 80% of that roster minus Cade. We would have been a very good ball club, but it all got taken away, and then the selfishness started popping up. And that's just not an assumption, right? That's from some of the players in the locker room that talked about how whenever the season was lost, people stopped paying attention. They stopped running the plays. They started just jacking up random shots or not making the right passes or not setting screens up high because they were more worried about individual statistics, whether it be to get themselves prepared for the draft or to transfer somewhere, that the team concept just kind of fell apart. So I do blame the NCAA to some degree for that, because if Mike Boynton did get that year, a year after Cade Cunningham, with that team that returned almost 80% of the roster, we could have done something, but nonetheless, we didn't get to. So that's previously why I've kind of had some ill feelings towards the NCAA, but this is just, it's getting ridiculous. It's supposed to be a governing body that, based off of your attendance in class and your GPA and your test scores, and while also juggling athletics, all of that stuff is supposed to go through the NCAA. But who are they kidding? Who are we pretending to be? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that the NCAA is what it is. And Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, ironically enough, was the first one to mention a few years back about how we don't need the NCAA. They're just a governing body that is kind of in the way. And then, was it the year prior in basketball, there was like 16 schools that got caught illegally recruiting, and literally we were the only ones that got banned from doing stuff. So the NCAA has already proven time and time again that they're going to go after the SMUs and the Oklahoma States and the Colorados, but they're not going to mess with the Bamas and the Miamis. They're just not going to do it. There will never be a time, I don't think, again, toothpaste out of the tube, back in the tube type of scenario. I don't think that the NCAA will have the ability to ever go back to being a legitimate governing body ever again. There's too much money involved. There's too many dirty hands involved. There's too many conference affiliations and dollar bills that are being passed around, not only to players and potential violations running rampant, like they know it's happening. That's the most ridiculous aspect of all of this. The NCAA knows the schools that are illegally recruiting. They know the violations. They just don't really care unless it's a message they can send, right? And schools like Oklahoma State and SMU will always be on the chopping block because we'll never be Bama. We'll never be Oregon. It's so frustrating that if you're not in the SEC or a blue blood, you will get no help from the NCAA. You will get no favors whatsoever. And they will actually condemn you and come and get you and fine you whenever they can. And they will, quote unquote, set examples at every turn physically possible. But holding themselves accountable, it ain't going to happen. Restructuring it to where it actually was beneficial to student athletes, it ain't going to happen. So the only way that this changes is if stop playing nice, right? I do think that was a lesson that new athletic director Chad Weiberg learned, because he was very new and he tried to do the right thing. It didn't go the right way. KU, meanwhile, they can get caught doing anything, anytime, anywhere in basketball, and it's okay. And they're openly, willingly refusing to cooperate. And they still got nothing but a slap on the fingertip. The haves and the have-nots are determined by the NCAA, and they have been for a long time. And Greg Sankey, he said it, he's put it out there, but he's not going to get rid of the NCAA because he knows good and daggone well that that conference is almost bulletproof. So it doesn't matter what happens to the Big 12 or the ACC or the AAC or the Pac-12. It doesn't matter. And even the Big 10 to some degree. It's so corrupt and crooked. Who knows? But I do know NFL action, playoffs, money, it can help. Whenever you're trying to get your finances figured out, get with Game Time to get your tickets, because it's not just about sports, whether it's football, music, comedy, theater, local events near you. Game Time is going to have everything you need to take care of your ticketing needs. And with the NFL playoff action getting hotter than ever, remember, you can see the thrill of your team clinching another playoff W, or just the memories that come with the playoffs in general. This year, Game Time is going to make it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with a new feature called Game Time Picks. It's going to filter out all the fluffy stuff to give you just the most incredible deals so you can focus on what matters, which is physically being there. Butts in seats, baby. You can use Game Time Picks to grab tickets for an upcoming playoff game, and it's not going to be any easier than ever before. If you find a super deal that gives you the most incredible value for amazing seats, then you know Game Time is the right stop. Knowing tickets are backed up by the Game Time guarantee is going to give you the most peace of mind. So you have that peace of mind. Take out that guesswork and buy tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create that account, redeem that code, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a basketball team roaming the streets of Stillwater, America, and playing a mean game on the Gallagher-Iba floor. And that is the Cowgirls. Jacie Hoyt found a way. The Cowgirl Ball Club found a way. And it was actually pretty wild, because the first half looked much like the first half of Houston. In Houston, we got down by 26, was the peak in the second half. And we had a chance to hit the game-tying three as time expired that would have put it into overtime. And we clearly had the momentum because we erased a 26-point deficit. Well, that wasn't the number 9 team in America. That was the second to worst team in the Big 12. So we played down to our level of competition, and it got a little bit too far away from us. So now we know if it's within 23 points, you're not safe if you're playing Oklahoma State. Thank you, Jacie Hoyt. That is the first top 10 W in Gallagher-Iba in women's basketball since 2017. And again, it was a tale of two completely different halves. The first half, they were significantly better. They were better in up and down on the court. They were better in transition. Obviously, they were better at setting screens and getting open looks. They had so many open threes where we didn't have a girl within 10 feet. And it's just because the way they were setting their screens. And they had a very good defensive game plan. They have one of the best players in America. And we got to see it last night. Like, yeah, that girl's good. TCU has 3 of the top players in the country. They have 2 players that average almost 20 a game, another girl that averages almost 16 points a game. And they all, to some degree, got theirs. In the first half, it looked like it was going to be a runaway affair. But the second half was entirely different. We were shutting down those lanes, so the passing wasn't easy for them. We were hustling up and down the floor even more. The defensive tenacity was significantly better. Tegan Magassa was getting absolutely owned in the first half. She didn't really get owned in the second half. And then Prez Egvaregba got to come in there in spells and make some things happen. The defense caused so much havoc that it got them out of their game. And TCU started missing a bunch of shots. And we were finding ways to capitalize. And then the X factor. The true freshman, Jaden Wooten, she was what they couldn't have prepared for. And you could see it. Like, from a film standpoint, they knew how to guard everybody on the floor, right? but they did not understand the game of Jaden Wooten. She took over that fourth quarter. And I know Staley Hurd's the one that hit the massive three to get us the lead, but go back and check out that pass because that was pretty wild. Jaden Wooten looked like she was going nowhere, running straight out of bounds. And then as she's in midair, turns around and she's facing two girls from TCU and does some, Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes sidearm kind of pass to the top of the key while falling out of bounds in midair. It was impressive. So she drew three defenders all the way down to the paint. So by the time she, dished it out to Hurd could have taken 17 dribbles. She was so wide open. And she had time to set her feet and get off a good shot, which is the exact opposite of the Houston game because she took the same spot or the same shot from the almost exact same spot. The difference is she was running up the floor and she was being rushed. She had time, thanks to Jaden Wooten. So we've talked about how we have scorers that can take the load off of each other, like Micah Gray. Alexia Smith actually was carrying a lot of that load in the first half. So it was a team effort for sure. But if it's not going to be Micah Gray or Annegret Assi or Staley Hurd, it is so much fun to now know that not only do we have a 6'7", okay, that in the first half she looked way out of sorts, but the second half she was a different individual. She was okay with banging down low and giving up her body. Then you factor in Jaden Wooten. That's what can make this team extremely explosive. As TCU just proved, if you have a game plan to take away Annegret and parts of Staley Hurd and Tegan Magassa, okay, because we have more. You think you got Micah Gray figured out also? Okay. Enter Jaden Wooten. Now, next time we play TCU, it's going to be interesting. I'm assuming it'll be in the Big 12 tournament. But they will be ready for Jaden Wooten next time. So that's going to be interesting. And now the race for winning a Big 12 title just got completely crazy thanks to the Cowgirls. So this was a huge win. I'm so happy we got it. It was so much fun to watch. And to see the court storming afterwards in a blackout, pretty epic experience. So you can go to Galgaraba for wrestling and have a blast. You can go to Galgaraba for women's basketball and have a blast. Steve Lutz, that means you're up, bud. That means you're up. And I don't think Steve Lutz has been doing bad. It's just, it's above average, slightly above average, which I don't know. He's got time. All righty, y'all. That's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Hit the like button. Dislike it if you don't like it. That's okay, too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe. My podcast and people out there, do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. Later, my taters.